Hello. I'm going to be doing the state education data task, and so I found the Common Core standards that align with this task. So I'm going to be representing some data with some plots on the number line, such as box plots. I'm also going to be looking at the center and spread and a little bit of the shape for some data. For this data, and I will also be looking at some outliers, so yes, extreme data points, and then I'll also be making some interpretations and evaluations based on that data. So I'm just going to open this up right now. This is a bunch of data about the average salaries and other statistics about education in different states across the U.S. So the first thing we only want to focus on the South and West. So what I will be doing is getting rid of these two, and just hiding these, setting aside, if you will. And then I will just take the average salary data here, just throw it down here. And you'll notice that it's kind of skewed towards the right. And you can definitely see that when you've had the mean standard deviations on there. You can see that the mean is not really at a point where like the peak of the data is, so it's obviously like because the outliers are kind of like pushing it out, you know. So yeah, this is where the mean is. It's around 52,000 for these two regions. And yeah, you'll notice that like most of the data is within this one standard deviation of 8,000. So most of the data is within 8,000 of 52,000. And there's definitely like some outliers over here and then one over here, but most of the data is just right here. But we want to like focus on like the different regions and which region is best, or like what the different attributes of each region is. So you'll notice when we split it up from south to west, that the west has clearly like a higher mean, but like really not that much higher because both the means fall within one standard deviation of each other, and they're only $3,000 apart, $3,000 apart. So the average salaries are for the south and west are actually pretty close, but and also you might note that there's less states in the west and more states in the south, and also the west states seem to be a little bit more like less of like a peak, you know. There's like 3 dots right here, but like there's definitely a lot more dots, like a smaller spread, even though and like you can see that with the standard deviations too. Like this is clearly a little bit less than this, $500 or so less than the West's average salaries. But the one thing that's I found really interesting when I was looking at this was actually looking at the box plots. And something you might notice here is that if you interpreting this box plot correctly, 50% of the data points should be above the median. And you'll notice that like for the West, the median is the median of the West is higher than the upper bound for the South. So there's these 3 outliers here, but where the most of the data is less than what 50% of the West is. So like 50%. If you were to just randomly choose a state in the West, you would have a 50% chance of getting a state with a higher average salary than almost all of the states in the South, which I found really interesting. And also another thing that I found interesting, and we just want to like check this out for a little bit. One thing that like seems a little different to me was that if you look at these 3 outliers here for the South, which seem to match up pretty closely to the data in the West, at least the upper data in the West. This one is I believe Delaware. This one is Maryland, and this one is DC. So it's just these three areas right here, states and district, and actually, like, if we just like hide these just for a minute, you'll notice that like the median goes down and it's considerably lower. Like if you were to randomly choose a state in the West now, you would have a 50% chance of getting a state with a higher average salary than all of the average salaries of all of the states in the South. So that's really interesting. And the reason that I think that's interesting is because these three states are all right next to each other, and like Maryland, Delaware, and DC are kind of like sometimes considered like northern states. Like to me, I've always kind of considered Delaware to be a more northern state. Maryland's still southern, but like it was part of the Union in the Civil War, I think. But anyways, yeah. So these states are kind of like, it's kind of different. So like it's interesting that the three outliers of this are all right next to each other. Anyways, I kind of spent a little too much time on that. So anyways, I wanted to talk a little bit about which state that I would like to teach at, and where would be the best place to teach. And I wanted to look a little bit at like the student per teacher ratio. And so I'm just gonna get rid of this because I want to be dramatic, And so I look at the student teacher ratio. We'll get rid of the box plots. And you'll notice that there's these data points over here, and like they kind of alternate with like the highest, and then the lowest. And it's like this one has really high, this one has really low, and this one is really high, and this one has really low. But they're all like way out in the very upper ranges of the average pay. And the thing that you can see right away, if I just add the census regions back on, is that all the ones with the really high student teacher ratio go up to the west, and all the ones with the really low one go down to the south. And I thought that was very interesting that the ones that pay the most and have a low student to teacher ratio are all in the south, and the ones that pay the most and have a high student teacher ratio go up to the north. And so that's just something interesting. And like if I was choosing a state that I wanted to work at, I would want to choose a state that had a low student teacher ratio and the highest pay, and that's actually this one here, which is Washington DC. And for some reason when I click on it, it gets rid of it, so I don't know what's up with that. It just kind of like deletes the number here. But anyways, another thing you want to take into account here is like, why is these average salaries higher in these states? And the thing I was looking at trying to determine that was like, maybe like why do they have a high student to teacher ratio but also can afford to like pay teachers more? And it's actually like, I was just like messing around and I saw like number, if I like add a new trivia here, number of students in the state, you can kind of determine that just by taking the number of teachers attribute and multiplying by the students per teacher attribute. And you'll notice that exactly what you'd expect, that like those with the number of students have a high student-teacher ratio, and like so clearly that's the reason why there's not enough students. It's not that there's not enough teachers; it's that they have like the same amount of teachers. I guess there's still not enough teachers, but there's still not the same amount of teachers. But anyways, like I just wanted to say that like I would teach at DC if I was just going based on this data. There's also other things that go into that, but just going based on this data, I would want to teach in Washington DC.